1063, Mr. Clerk, would you read that in, please?
Communication 1063, requested discussion on primary election problems and plans for the general election to prevent another election disruption from Councilmember Brenda J. Ford, dated September 12, 2014.
First, can I get a motion to file Communication 1063?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. First by Mr. Illegan, second by Mr. Kern, and I am relinquishing the chair to my Vice Chair, Margaret Willey.
So let the record show that I have assumed the chair.
Madam
Yes, go ahead.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Brenda Ford.
First of all, I want to call Senator Ruderman up here because he, as well as I, have been very actively involved in this situation. And I would like to get a report from him or comments from him on our situation before I go on with my stuff.
Thank you very much, and I'll be brief. I did, as Councilmember Ford has mentioned, I did register my grave concerns to the Elections Commission, the Elections Clerk, the Attorney General, the Governor's Office, and everybody else that would listen, including the ACLU and the Federal Department of Justice. I believe that something really terrible happened in the primary election that was human-caused and shouldn't have happened. I won't go over all of it, but I will just point out, as an example, one of the communities that never had a chance to vote was Nanavali, which 90% of it was blocked in physically on the day when the polls opened and closed, and they never had another chance. Other areas were similarly affected. Nanavali is quite remarkably the poorest community in our district. So it's a real civil rights violation that a whole class of people were not affected. We're affected by this. I think Councilmember Illegan deserves a fair election and no asterisk by his name about whether or not it really was won. But the fact is that the early walk-in voting and the election day voting showed the need for a runoff. And then his two top challengers, both of their neighborhoods, never voted. It's not fair. With all respect to Councilmember Illegan, he doesn't deserve an asterisk by his name over this election. That's done. Apparently nothing's going to be done about it. I just want to make two other comments. I tried to reach Scott Nago, our state elections officer, on the day of the election, as the only elected official on the ground familiar with the actual conditions on the ground, who was not a candidate that day. And he wouldn't take my call. Over and over again, he wouldn't take my call. I find it outrageous. I've already registered my complaint about that. But on the county level, I want to commend our county clerk, Stuart Maeda, who was very receptive to my calls, both that day and each of the following days when I needed his help. And he forwarded my messages, and he forwarded Mr. Nago's messages back to me. And I just want to commend you for that. Thank you. And the other thing regarding what to do about the general election, I think the council can urge or send a letter to the state elections office urging absentee ballots for the Puna district, at least for the general election, because what's clear is we don't know what the conditions will be that day. This time we know it months in advance, not a couple of days in advance, and that would result in a fair election where everybody has a chance to vote. And you guys don't have the power to compel that, but you have the power to request that of the elections office, and I urge you to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator, just
I'm sorry.
We got, sorry, I lost chairmanship.
That's right. Okay, Mr. Kern, and I think we'll focus on questions.
I don't have any questions as I have a discussion.
But why don't you stay? Can you stay a few more minutes?
If necessary, it's getting to be supper time, but I'm just kidding. I can stay a few more minutes if it's useful.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead, Mr. Kern, and then Gregor. What?
What? Excuse me, I had the floor and I asked him to come up and speak. I haven't had my 5 minutes yet.
Yeah, she still has the floor technically, yeah.
Technically, she is still.
I have the floor.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay. Both the senator and I have filed written protests all the way up the chain to the Department of Justice. They have opened an investigation on this election. the reason, and I will have Mr. Maeda come down and give us his report and his plan of action. I can only second everything the senator said, because it's true that people were trapped. And what I see happening at the state level and even at the county level is a general refusal to accept that there were several, if not many, subdivisions that were literally trapped inside their subdivisions on both the primary day and the makeup day. NAGO does not want to address that, and we are not addressing it adequately either. So we have disenfranchised voters, and we've got a lot of really unhappy people. So you heard testimony from Hope, I don't know if she's still here, about the number of people who've signed petitions, about 1,000 people. So people are really upset about this. Do I think it's going to cause a change in the primary? No, I don't think it's going to cause a change in the primary. But certainly, we need to change what happens in the general election. So with that, I would like to ask the clerk to please come down and explain his plan of action for making sure we do not have a repeat of what happened in the primary, which is to disenfranchise voters. And by the way, just for the record, while Stuart is coming down, I blame the State Office of Election 100% for this fiasco, okay? 100%. Thank you. Mr. Maeda, please, yes, thank you, sir. Identify yourself.
Stuart Maeda, the County Clerk.
Okay. Sir, would you, you don't have to go through all the details of the primary because we've heard it, okay? But my concern is, what are we going to do on the general to make sure this doesn't happen again, in view of the fact that we have a lava flow and we're still in hurricane season, so we don't know what's going to happen between now and then.
Well, for the precincts that are affected by the lava flow, that would be precincts 0402, which is Keonepoko, 0403, which is the Pohoa High School, and 0404, which is the Pohoa Community Center. We had mailed out letters to all of those registered voters. There were 7,542 registered voters, informing them that and also having a seasonal absentee ballot available for them, application available for them. So if they wanted to apply for a seasonal absentee ballot, they could apply. They could use a temporary address. It wouldn't affect the district in which they voted in, because we understand that people may be relocating, and they would all have that opportunity. Anyone can request for a absentee ballot and vote absentee, but we're not doing an all-mail absentee ballot for those precincts. We are going to open an early walk-in polling site at Nana Valley. That's going to be from October 21st until October 31st, which is the regular walk-in voting, early voting site times. And that's going to be down in Nana Valley. We are also working with the State Office of Elections to figure out, as the general election gets closer and what is happening with the flow, we would like to try to keep the precincts all open and have them be able to go to their precincts. But if for whatever reasons one of those precincts are affected, then we're going to be looking at consolidating precincts so that there still would be walk-in voting that day, but maybe not at that precinct. If the precincts and the accessibility are all as they are today, then we would like to hold the election as it would normally be held. So those are the things that we're doing in preparation for the lava flow. We also are down at the informational center. We've been down there since the 17th, although we're going to kind of scale back because there hasn't been a lot of activity, and then we're in touch with the administration. So when there's more activity or more need, we will go down again and station people at the informational center just to let them know about absentee, give them the absentee applications if they're interested. Just stay in touch with State Office of Elections and Civil Defense. Civil Defense was very helpful throughout the whole ordeal with the storm, and they are likewise very receptive to working with us in the general election.
You've got 3 precincts, and if the road is cut off, those 3 precincts would be diverted to consolidated Nonavali location.
Well, no, we have early walk-in voting,
Oh, that's at Nonavali.
absentee walk at Nonavali at the
Okay.
community center. We cannot create a new precinct, but we can consolidate. So we're going to look at consolidating if, not necessarily if access is cut off by Highway 130 being no longer usable, but if one of those polling places is inundated with lava or something happens to one of the polling places, then of course we're going to have to consolidate. But if access to 130 is cut off and we can still use the alternate access routes, we intend to leave those polling places open and just have our staff and take our equipment and all of our supplies out through the access roads that are available.
Okay. One of the issues that was a problem was because the storm took down all the electrical, that we couldn't get TV, newspaper, radio, internet, everything was shut down. Unless we get another storm like that, we probably will have electricity going through the district. But some of the things that Mr. Nago had suggested and got chastised for severely at the state, you were there, was putting up banners on the highways when nobody could get out of their subdivisions to even see them. So I don't want a repeat of that. That's what I'm trying not to get. And flyers were sent home with school children, but of course, if you didn't have children in the school, you wouldn't have gotten notification. Flyers posted in public areas, but people were still trapped in their subdivision. It just went on and on and on. It was like there was just no concept at the state level what we were dealing with. And frankly, at the state level, Mr. Nago blamed civil defense for telling him the precincts were open. Well, the precincts were open in a couple of places, but everybody else was trapped. So it was just a complete fiasco at the state level as to understanding how bad the situation was on the ground. I don't want it to happen again. So I appreciate what you're telling me, but when I look at these methods of notifying people, it failed about 100% here. Because of the people being trapped. So if we are cut off from electricity for whatever reason, hurricane or the lava flow, what other methods are you going to use other than the informational location that you're going to hand out absentee ballot things?
Well, in regards to power issues for the precincts, we did have the assistance of civil defense. They did have generators stationed all over the islands at various different fire departments. So if we lost power to any of those precincts, we could use those generators to power up again so that voting could continue. And civil defense would assist us in that way again if it was a power issue. The difficulty in getting the word out was that we had a very short period of time to prepare for the makeup election, and we were looking at the best ways to try to get the word out to folks. Myself and the deputy clerk even went down to Vava and handed out informational flyers so that the people down there, who are very isolated, would know. And by the time the election, the continued primary occurred, the roads are fairly accessible at that point throughout the subdivisions. I drove there. I was driving through those subdivisions when we went down there. And so there was good accessibility. There was a lot of movement around those areas from my driving down there myself. So I know it was a very difficult situation, but I think everyone tried to do the best they could. We were working with kind of sketchy information at times, especially the day after the storm had hit. When we were at the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, on Friday after the storm was hit, it was real difficult because Civil Defense, National Guard, and the fire department were all not allowed to fly, so we couldn't get a good assessment of how bad the damage was. We really didn't know how bad the damage was at that point in time on the Friday before the general election was going to happen. And we were, in the past, during times when, for example, Ka'u was cut off several elections ago because of weather, helicopters flew in with our equipment and ballots, and the election went on. No? So in a case of Lower Puna getting cut off, we could do the same, where we could fly in all of our equipment, all of our things, so that those folks that are trapped there could still vote, and we could get our equipment down, and we could get the ballots back. And again, Civil Defense and Fire would assist us in that area. So there is some precedent for when areas are isolated, what can happen.
Thank you. The last, these are just comments. If we were to have another storm like Iselle, I would like to see you advocate for holding the makeup election 14 days later, not 6. I'm asking you to do that. And the other thing is, in Nanavali as a walk-in, has that always been a walk-in early voting precinct?
No, it has not.
Okay. The one thing that I was always told by Ms. Nakamoto was that one of the reasons we don't have walk-ins in more areas is you have to have a safe, like at a bank or a credit union, that will take the ballot boxes and hold them in the safe so that they're safe. Okay? And does Nanavali have some place where those boxes are going to be, the equipment's going to be locked up?
There is a secure place, but we're also going to be removing the cards every night. So, and the precinct captain there will be taking the card with him, so that that would be secured, and that's how the ballots are counted.
That gives me a case of nerves, thinking about those cards coming in and out and being damaged in some way and the votes lost. Anyway, very issue. Thank you. I'm yielding.
Yes, council member, I think Kern was first, and then, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. First, just a couple comments on what happened. I think on the Stuart, our county staff did a great job. Who knew that it wasn't a time to vote? It was hard at best. So that's District 5. Now District 4 is clear that was needed to be shut down.
The whole district.
The whole District 4. My opinion would have been 4 and 5, but I mean it's clear that 4 had to be shut down. No question about it. What happened after that blows my mind. It is just absolutely outrageous. I know that the law said 21 days we have to run a special election. I don't know if the state just didn't get that we have this unique geographical situation in Puna. We have a unique mailing situation in Puna. Excuse me. Most people have P.O. boxes. So the thought of, okay, how do I say this? Chronologically, when the press releases were coming out for the makeup election, the first press release said that there would be a district open in HPP, or a polling place open in HPP, and there would be a polling place open in Keone Poco. So the 2 precincts that were closed down would be open on the special election day. Within 10 minutes, another press release came back and said only Keone Poco is going to be open on special election day. What? That doesn't make any sense. Half of the voting population in District 4 resides in HPP. You're gonna and if you just look at a map, you got to drive out of HPP. You got to drive the most likely way that most people aren't traveling, because it's away from town, and drive all the way down to Keone Poco to vote. No wonder you don't get a voter turnout. It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to make a special election, at least have those precincts open up, or do something special to have a common place. If they would have said Pahoa, it might not be legal to change that around, but if it would have been in Pahoa, it would have been more reasonable and would have had more voters going out there. But to hold a special election and only give people in Puna a week, a notification, if that, is ridiculous. When people are recovering from a storm, and even if there was no storm recovery, the way that most people check their mail is like once a week, maybe twice a week. It's just a different way of life. It's not like you get your mail delivered every day, go check your mailbox. And for some reason, on the state side, they didn't think of that. They didn't consider that. So, as Ms. Ford said, 14 days would be a minimum. I would even push it out longer than that. Get that notification out there. I wrote a letter in support as well for stating this information through Hope. it's ridiculous. So I would say if you guys have to consolidate, please try to consolidate in an area that would be common. And if you can't consolidate, don't close down the precincts. And again, I don't think this was done on the county level. I think you guys have a good program. I'm just blown away by what happened. I can't believe what happened. Doesn't even matter. I mean, the results are that doesn't matter. It's when you look at the percentage and the turnout, that's all you have to do is do that math, and you can see it was done in the worst possible way it could have been done, or almost the worst possible way it could have been done. And again, that's not, I think, the county side of it. We're doing the very best we can. Those aren't our shots to make. If those were our shots to make, we would have been, I think, done it a lot different. So I think that you guys have a good plan. I would really, honestly, depending on what happens here, if this lava opens up more, give everybody a mail-in ballot, mail-out a ballot. Everybody have an absentee ballot. I'm not sure if we can do that with the law that we have, or if there's some type of proclamation that could be made, but that would be a fail-safe. If everybody had one, you can still walk in, you can do whatever you want, but everybody in that area has that would be the ultimate fail-safe. In my opinion, that's what we should have, because what happened last time is just unbelievable. I don't even have the words to describe it. So with that, and Stuart, first time, thank you for what you do. Yes, please do.
Could I comment? Thank you. Initially when the proclamation was given in regards to the all-mail for those two precincts, it was because at the time that proclamation was made, it was not known whether the roads would be accessible or when they would be accessible. And just a national philosophy in regards to elections is that whenever there's a postponed election, you need to try to have the postponed election look and be as similar as the primary election was for all of the voters. And so in looking at that, and when the Monday after the hurricane or the tropical storm hit, there was the indication from Civil Defense and Public Works that the roads would be open. Then the decision was made to do it as a polling place election, which was similar to what all the other voters had experienced. And we, on the county level, actually wanted to have it a couple weeks out, but HRS doesn't allow for that. If you have a polling place election, it has to be within 7 days of the primary election, and that's why it had to be done so quickly. And so there's some fundamental things that exist that kind of tie our hands in some ways, and we have to try to follow those things. And so that's why it kind of occurred that way. I guess in retrospect, if the other precincts in that lower Puna area, if we knew the extent that those voters were trapped, the recommendation could have been made to have a postponed election for them, but we did not receive that information to make that recommendation or to even talk about those things. And the timeline was really tight because once the polls had opened, we had no way to change anything. It was kind of set. It was kind of, the ball had been rolling already. The governor, within his powers, could have extended the polling hours for those precincts, but in talking to Senator Ruderman, the realization was that extending it any amount of time would not have made a difference for those folks. And so that's why I think the decision was made not to extend.
So whose idea was it to only open up one precinct on the special election day?
Well, the HPP, we would wanted to have both precincts open, but HPP, the community center was severely damaged. It wasn't known if it was going to be cleared by the time the continued primary was going to occur. And so we decided that because there were so many unknown factors about that we just weren't able to use that facility. There were power lines across the driveway. It was still blocked. It had not been cleared yet.
So in hindsight, doing a traditional polling place was wrong. It should have been mailed out. Because there was just, you know what I mean, when you look at, when you got half of the voting population in HPP, you can't even do a precinct there. And, I mean, it's obviously easy to look at it now and be like, coulda, shoulda, woulda done this. I guess the reason for this is to make sure that we learn from this and don't have the same thing happen twice. So that would be my suggestion. Which is going to come up tomorrow. It's another part of that conversation. So thank you, Mr. Maeda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You look like you're about to fall. But I just want to say, Senator, you know what we are requesting, that change of HRS. I do want to share that when Iselle happened, August 7th, everything changed. And I do want to point out what you did right. And what you did right was close HPP and Keone Poco. I feel that 5 should also have been closed too. And right after Iselle, when I drove around, it was bad. And Albizia trees was like 90% of the damage. We just could not get around. Now, when I heard that you were gonna do the makeup hole at the end of the month, I was pretty relieved, because when I walked around, people had told me that they couldn't get out, they couldn't vote that day, and after the 15th, and I talked to some people and they told me stories that they were turned away and they wanted to vote on the 15th, but they didn't get a chance because that precinct was open on the 9th. And it's unfortunate. I wish it could have been done different. One of the things that I really want to make sure gets changed is that one of the biggest concerns, one of many concerns, is that the only option was to vote digitally. And I felt the option to vote paper needed to be there. I like going to the polls because of the paper copy. I felt that was taken away. It was only digital, and that should not happen again. One of the other things that when I looked at the numbers, I added the total votes. I came out with 3,780, not counting the blank ones. And last 2012, in the primary, it was 4,348, and that was a presidential election. And 4 years before that was much of a bigger district, because redistricting didn't happen, and that was 4,440. Even one vote turned away is bad. Councilmember Kern mentioned it, that I'd felt better if we were given some time to just get our stuff together and then be able to vote. So there's some HRS work that needs to be done, and I know the senator is going to do that. I just wanted to voice out some of the concerns that I had. And it's been such a crazy time. And I just want to say, through all this crazy times, you've been doing your due diligence. And I know most of the decision you could not make on your own. It was made for you. But you executed very well with what you were given. So I just want to say thanks for everything that you've done. And if you can consider the concerns that we have for the next time. Thank you.
I just have a quick request. Mr. Maeda, I don't know if you can pull this off, but I would like to see that the general election for 2014 be for Puna only, and possibly not the Cooper Center area. Okay, Volcano's in Puna, but they only had a small amount of impact from the storm. But because of the lava flow, we know we've got a disaster. We don't know what's going to happen. Can we please just do all mail ballots for Puna, for districts 4 and 5, and that section of 3 that's part of Puna? If there's a precinct in there, I don't know if there is. Is there a precinct in District 3? I know there's a finger that is.
The districts, the precincts that will be affected are going to be
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Keone Poco, the Poho High School, and the Poho Community Center.
Okay.
Those are the HPP is the next closest precinct, but they're not going to be affected by the lava flow.
I just think, to be fair, treat everybody in Puna equally, mail ballots to everybody in districts 4 and 5, and not even worry about this in any, whether it's a incoming storm or anything else. We know we got a problem going on, so let's deal with it up front. That's my request to you. See if you can get an all mail ballots into districts 4 and 5. That's my request. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's someone else, I'm going to make a few comments, and I did want to ask Senator Ruderman one more question, if you don't mind coming up. Okay, I was confused by how you answered a couple of questions, Mr. Maeda. Who decided that we were not going to do the mail-in ballot? I mean, when that went out, how did it switch to the 7 days? Who switched that? Is that the state or is that the county? That's the state telling us that we had to do that. I mean, I can just remember people coming to me way up in Kohala and like, why are we doing this? And also hearing about that people in these other precincts weren't being able to vote. I mean, I'm not sure how I'm hearing things, and then I hear you say we didn't have this information, so maybe I'm just confused. So I just want to clarify, and maybe, I don't know, Senator Ruderman, if you have anything to say on that, or just enlighten me.
Well, when the decision was made to...
By who?
State Office of Elections, in regards to the all mail, because they issued the proclamation. We give them input. Civil Defense gave them input, and we all give our input to State Office of Elections about what the circumstances are. And when the decision was to postpone that election, the decision was to do it all mail. And the reason was because at that point in time, that was the Friday before the election was going to occur, that those precincts were closed and postponed. At that time, the conditions were unknown as far as how long it would take to clear roads, what was going to happen, what kind of infrastructure problems there were. So it was just unknown. On the Monday after the election, which was the 11th, we had a discussion with Civil Defense, with the State Office of Elections, and at that point in time, the major roads had been cleared, and the subdivision roads were in the process of being cleared in those areas, because we could only look at the precincts that were postponed. We couldn't look at the Nanavali or the lower area.
Why not?
Because the law does not allow that.
A state law says you can't look at other areas that were open, but nobody could get to them.
Because they had not been postponed before the polls were open. Once the polls were open, the election needed to go on, and the law does not allow us to just make changes at that point in time already. So once the polls were open on that Saturday morning for those precincts, there was not much that could be done. The only thing was that the governor could do a proclamation to extend the hours for those polling sites, but that would not have solved that problem. And so that's the dilemma we were in. And in hindsight, if we knew the conditions in those areas, we would have probably made the recommendation to close those polling places as well. But when we were assessing on the morning after the hurricane, we were assessing our precincts and to make sure they were accessible, to make sure that we could have an election in those precincts. And the two precincts that were inaccessible were HPP and the Keonipoko precincts.
Okay.
And that's why those were postponed. So what happened on Monday was when it was clear from civil defense that the roads were being cleared, and throughout the rest of that week, more of the roads would be cleared. Then the decision had been made to do open a polling place, and hopefully we would have been able to open both polling places, but unfortunately that did not occur. And the reason why the decision was to open a polling place was because that more closely resembled the experience that all of the other voters had on election day, and that's the basic election philosophy. And so that's why that recommendation was made. At that point, when the recommendation was made or the decision was made to open a polling place, it had to be done within 7 days because that's what HRS requires. And so that's what we were left with to deal with. Just as some background, after Hurricane Iniki hit Kauai, their election was held 8 days later. Hurricane Andrew in Florida, theirs was held a week after Hurricane Andrew. When 9/11 hit, which was, one of the most major events in our history, they were supposed to vote on that day, and they postponed their election for 2 weeks. And so it's sort of consistent with what happened here with what has happened previously and nationally, and that's part of why those decisions were made.
Okay, Senator Ruderman, do you have a comment?
I agree with almost everything that our county clerk just said, by the way. The governor did have the power to extend the election on the day once the polls were open. He's correct that once the polls open, the Office of Election or the county clerk did not have authority to extend that authority. Apparently chose not to do that. A couple of things I want to bring to everyone's attention about what happened. I was asked to go take a look at one of the closed polling places and take a picture of it. I have a picture of it in my phone. I've sent it to everyone concerned. There was a sign on that polling place says, "Polling place is closed. You will be mailed a ballot within 21 days."
Right.
And the poll worker that was there behind a barricade was saying the same thing. Those people who worked their way out of their homes and out of the streets to get to that polling place that day were given what I consider official legal notification from our elections officers to go home and expect a ballot in the mail within 21 days. That was a reasonable decision to mail the ballot within 21 days. As Councilmember Kern said, in a couple of weeks, everyone would have got to their mailbox. It would have been a reasonable thing. I understand the desire to make the polling as similar as possible, but what's inexcusable to me is the change in decision on Monday afternoon from what was officially notified, and by the way, the same sign was posted on Keonipoko, to change that after having officially notified everybody who made their way there in person to saying, okay, we're going to hold the election 3 days from now. We're going to notify you by mail, by a note home with your kids to your parents. We all know how reliable that is. So we gave people a change in our official notification. We gave them 3 days notice. People who didn't have electricity, television, phone, internet, newspaper deliveries, these people had to somehow find out about a change in the plan from what they were officially notified on Saturday. That's not fair. I can't believe that it's legal.
Right.
The other thing I want to say is, in trying to reach I tried to reach the governor's office as well as the elections office. They didn't answer their phone that day, which I appreciate Mr. Maeda answering his phone that day. I really do. But it was expressed earlier how the people making these decisions in Honolulu don't understand what was going on out here. It's not only a lifestyle question, but what was happening that day on the ground because of the storm. But I was told, oh, you shouldn't have tried to call them, you should have emailed them. Well, I didn't have electricity, internet, phone, nothing. I mean, I went out to my car, charged my cell phone up, and called them. And they had the nerve to say, well, you should have emailed us. We would have responded to emails. It's just an example of how absurdly out of touch they were with the reality on the ground. I also want to reiterate that the fact that there was no paper option caused many people to turn away on the delayed voting, and the lack of privacy, which I've heard described to me many times on that day of the delayed voting, caused other people to turn away. The important thing about the mailed ballot is that I urge you to advocate for a universally mailed-in ballot for this election is that people deserve equal access to their voting rights. Wherever you live, wherever your precinct is, whatever your address is, you deserve equal access, not differentials based on what neighborhood you live in. And that's the nice thing about a mailed ballot, is we give everyone a safe, legal access to the same opportunity to have their vote heard. Thank you.
You have something on this point?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because then I was winding up.
Thank you, but this is important.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Willie, for granting me a little bit of latitude. I'm really, really angry with the State Office of Elections because I tried also the morning of Monday the 11th to reach Scott Nago, who was unavailable. I sent him an email Monday morning. I'd read a couple of sentences from that email. Mr. Nago, as you know, Hurricane Iselle caused extensive damage to the geographical district of Puna on the island of Hawaii. Additionally, due to the storm damage, most voters in Puna could not go to the polling precincts last Saturday, August 9, 2014, as they attempted to recover from the storm. I've attached a summary, etc., etc. Therefore, I respectfully request that every registered voter in Puna who did not vote be sent an absentee ballot immediately. I'm not going to read the rest. It goes along that line. And I got a form letter type thing back later that afternoon, which I picked up the next day, giving the same blather that we've been listening to for the last X number of weeks. They knew what was going on. Sunday morning, I was getting calls at my home from people who did have cell phone capability, telling me what was going on in Puna, because I wasn't down there. And Scott Nago knew because I emailed him this. I even had it on official letterhead when I emailed it. He knew what was going on. He chose to disenfranchise voters. So I'm sorry you didn't send an email, but I did it. And you and I were on the phone together, for days over this issue. So Mr. Nago has absolutely no excuses for what he did, and I don't want to get upset.
Okay, so the people that have filed complaints, is there any remedy? I mean, let's just assume that this is a violation of their constitutional civil rights. Where is it? We do have several different branches of government, and one is the executive that the state executive office didn't do what it was supposed to do or should do. I mean, I find that it was the notice issue and the posting that kept coming to me, and I kept hearing about, and then it's changed and nobody knows about it. So is there something, why isn't it? Why isn't the election thrown open and redone? Why isn't there a remedy?
I agree with your concern, council member. The ACLU saw this as a very serious issue. They were really quite excited about this case and thought they were going to win, but the state Supreme Court did not recognize their concerns, and I'm not aware of any remaining remedy except from the Federal Department of Justice, who has heard a lot of our complaints. I'm not aware that they've taken any action on it.
But anyway, the state covering the state.
Described as water under the bridge.
Madam Chair, I do have a tiny bit more information.
Okay, I want to stop, though.
Okay.
I have staff holding for the 11 o'clock coffee item, and I think we ought to postpone that. Or not postpone, but recess, whatever the technical word here I'm supposed to use is. So I just want to if I'm going to let Ms. Ford have one more second, I want to, before I do, that have some sense of this council when we have other committee issues to do where we're at. So I just would like a little feedback here in terms of the other things that we have on our plate.
I agree.
Gregor, what would...
I agree. I am ditto on what you said. Recess those committees.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at this, thinking about it, talking to staff, I think we should recess both the Finance Committee as well as the 11 o'clock Agriculture, Water, Energy, Sustainability to tomorrow. That way it's not pushing it off. We're taking care of it as fast as we can. We do have a decent agenda tomorrow, but it looks like if we could maybe recess those to say like 11 o'clock tomorrow, which gives us a little bit of latitude, or 11:15 on the next one, whatever that is, then we're fine. So we can just wrap this up, and then we have to open up each committee and then recess it.
Right, okay, and I'll let anyone, Ms. Ford?
We've had a constituent waiting since 11 o'clock this morning to talk on this over in Coney. He's been sitting there all day.
Okay.
I understand. He wanted to watch this situation. The only question, I'd like to be able to ask him one question: can he come back tomorrow to listen to this? That's the only thing I'm concerned about right now, because he's been there for...
Okay, he may not be able to listen to it if he can't, but you can go ahead and check.
Mr. Corker, can you hear me in Kona? Can you come up to the table and push the button in the middle of the... Thanks, Scott.
I'm still here.
Thank you. Mr. Corker, I can't talk to you or ask you anything, but can you come back tomorrow at about, what, we said 11-ish? So sometime 11-ish to hear the ag bill?
Okay.
Brenda, tomorrow is my wife's birthday, and I
Thank you.
promised to take her to
That solved
Merriman.
that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
We still got to recess.
I have a question, though. What if we were to recess till 8 a.m. Tomorrow? No? Okay, just ask.
8 a.m.? 8 a.m. would be fine for me.
But Mr. Corker, there's nobody on the council other than maybe Margaret who's willing to get here at 8 o'clock. I'm sorry.
5 o'clock. Okay. Huh?
Yeah, because we have to start our...
We have what? Okay, so anyway, I just checking. When we, we're right in the middle of a committee meeting, so I just want to find out technically how we process this recess. I can't recess
is there-
something that we're not in right now.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, may I ask, is there a rush to do it tomorrow? Is it possible to do it next committee? And that way, people can come when they need to? Is there a rush for tomorrow? Okay. I just wanted to ask.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I handle this properly. We are in the 1/3, and we're in the the 3 o'clock?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
We're in the 3 o'clock. We need to finish this.
Yes,
Vote to
and-
close this communication, and then we can just go take care of the other two
The other,
committees
okay.
Quickly.
Right, okay. Okay, I just want to make a couple comments. I mean, I personally am not in favor of doing an all-mail ballot. I know Stuart's gone back and sitting in its other seat, but I do feel the whole idea of why you provide things, even have that sense of doing the same. I don't voted no,
Yeah.
didn't I? No.
No, we
Okay.
voted
We all
yes.
voted yes. It's
Yeah.
over with.
Okay, so I want to go right to,
So now it's either yours or Valerie's, and
Yeah.
same thing on both.
I just
We
want
need
to go
to
ahead and open up
hold-
and close. Can we,
We need to have staff.
yeah, I think staff has to switch over. Jeff, can you just let me know when you're ready? Okay, thank you.
We're going back to finance now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, I was thinking maybe it was A and N.
Jeff is ready, and Jeanette?
You do like 11, I do 11.
So do like finance to 11 and maybe
We have
do
two.
Margaret's to 11.
Okay.
That's exactly what we said.
Dude,
Okay. I'm calling, okay. I'm going to call the Committee on Finance back to order. And we're going to go into recess till tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. We will reconvene. So this meeting is now in recess.
next one.
Okay, I'm now reconvening. Oh. Okay, jump the gun. Now, are Drew Okay, I'm now calling the Committee on Agriculture, Water, and Energy and Sustainability, the 19th session thereof, back to order. And I'm now going to recess the 19th session of the Committee on Agriculture, Water, and Energy Sustainability until tomorrow, it's October 1st at 11:30 a.m. This meeting is now in recess.
Perfect.
Y'all have a great night.
Emmy, right there.
Wait a minute, aren't we going to have more discussion?
She wants more. She's thriving.
Yeah.
Discussion.